Western Islands.
A place of peace and tranquility. With dramatic coastlines to explore. Oh wow. It's a place with its own unique cultures and traditions. Where historic industry is found alongside the new. With hidden beauty around every corner. Lovely. These are the islands of the Hebrides.
From the mainland, our journey will take us to Arran, from where we head to the Inner Hebrides, travelling north to Skye. From here, we cross to Lewis at the northern tip of the Outer Hebrides and travel south to our end point on the Isle of Barra, a trip covering more than 1,000 miles. In the third leg of our journey, we cross over to the Isle of Jura before visiting Iona and Staffa. We then travel on to Mull on the mainland and cross over to the Isle of Skye, our final stop in the Inner Hebrides. Along the route, we explore some of the last areas of wilderness in Britain, and visit a place of stunning natural history.
It's quite incredible.
Before discovering how island communities are adapting to survive, and how some are successfully preserving traditional methods. The ferry between Isla and Jura is the only vehicle ferry serving the island, and the only ferry operating all year round, making it a vital link for the local community. The fast-flowing Sound of Isla can prove tricky to cross in bad weather, but thankfully today the weather is much more forgiving. There is only one road on the island, running primarily along the east coast, one of the wildest and most mountainous islands in the Inner Hebrides. You're surrounded by stunning scenery all along the route. Jura is one of the least densely populated islands in Scotland, and is well known that the number of deer found here significantly outnumber the island's population. Even with the majority of settlements being located along the east coast, with the west coast mainly uninhabited, it's very difficult not to feel a sense of remoteness as we travel through an unspoiled natural landscape. As we continue following the road from Fearlin towards the Paps, we go through Craighouse, the main settlement on Jura, and one which is home to its only distillery and hotel. One noticeable thing about the island is that you're not confronted by harsh signposts or other highway clutter, which means the views are natural and uninterrupted. However, this also means you have to rely a lot on local information. In this case, we've been told that the best place to start the walk to the Paps was just after a bridge with 3 arches, something which proved difficult to spot from the road.
We're currently on a walk up to Loch Antiob, which is at the foot of the Paps of Jura. We've heard some thunder in the distance, so hopefully we won't be caught in a thunderstorm. We're going to continue up the path and see what we can find.
Although there are no fixed routes to Loch Antiob, we had been instructed by locals to follow the River Corran and then ascend, which proved to be good advice. You certainly don't need to ascend far to get an amazing view. However, the summits of the Paps themselves offer stunning views over the surrounding islands, including Mull to the north, Colonsay to the east, and Isla to the south. Consisting of 3 separate and steep-sided quartzite hills, the highest of which is Ben an Oe, meaning Mountain of Gold in Gaelic, which stands at 2,575 feet, the Paps dominate the Jura skyline, and it's said that on a clear day they can be seen from as far afield as Northern Ireland.
After a boggy and wet ascent, we finally made it to Loch Antiob, just behind me there. It's surrounded by 2 of the Paps of Jura. The third Pap is further over in that direction. One thing we've noticed as we've been walking through Jura is it is very quiet. This is because there's very few people actually here. Very few people live on the island and they don't get that many visitors either. One statistic is that wildlife outnumbers people 33 to 1. There are 6,000 deer on the island. Jura actually means Deer Island in Norse, whereas people, there are only 180.
There is also an abundance of wildflowers and insects to be seen, contributing to the unique feel that this landscape has. The name Paps originates from their conical shape, with Pap meaning breast in Old Norse. The Paps are certainly a must-see sight when visiting Jura, and the chances are you won't encounter anyone else as you explore. The tranquility and sheer magnificence of this location are what helps to make it an unforgettable place. From the remoteness of Jura, we now head north to an island known to many as the cradle of Christianity, Iona.
It's a busy little place with lots of things to see, and we're about to visit the Abbey. It was founded in AD 563 by Saint Columba. Since its founding, the island and indeed the Abbey has been a centre for Christianity and a site of pilgrimage for centuries.
Little remains of the original monastery which Columba and his followers built when they landed here. However, it is known that during this time, Iona amassed one of the greatest libraries in Western Europe and became a powerhouse of Dark Age learning. Upon Columba's death, his monastery became a site of pilgrimage for the living and dead. Indeed, many kings of Scotland are interred here. The present abbey was built in AD 1200, when the Benedictine order was introduced to the island, a move which caused controversy amongst the two religious groups.
Also on the island, near the Abbey, are the ruins of Iona Nunnery, founded in 1200.
Founded alongside the Abbey, the Augustinian Nunnery on Iona is one of the best preserved medieval nunneries in Britain, with many of the original stone carvings still visible.
The name for the Iona Nunnery in Gaelic translates into English as the Black Church. This relates to the colour of the robes that the nuns who lived here would have worn.
Although the Reformation led to both the nunnery and abbey falling into decline, the nunnery continued to be used as a place of burial for women long after. Today, both continue to be a place of pilgrimage for over 130,000 visitors every year. However, despite these numbers, it is claimed that people leave with a sense of peace and restoration.
Iona is certainly a pretty place. It has a rich religious heritage. And this, combined with a busy touristy feel, makes it a very interesting place to visit.
The next stage of our journey takes us to Staffa, a 32-acre uninhabited island located off the west coast of Mull.
Well, we've been on this extremely busy boat for about 30 minutes or so, and we're almost at our final destination, the island of Staffa.
The island's name is thought to have originated from the Old Norse for wooden building staves, which would have looked similar to the island's incredible basalt columns.
Waves are pretty big out here. You can see Fingal's Cave in the background.
One of the last remaining outcrops of a lava blanket which spread into this part of the Atlantic 60 million years ago, Staffa's basalt columns and caves have attracted increasing numbers of visitors every year since becoming popular in the late 18th century. The island's wild and natural beauty became a must-see location, with many 19th century nobles and royalty, including Queen Victoria and William Wordsworth, making the then difficult crossing.
So after 35 minutes of sailing, we've reached the island of Staffa.
As another group of visitors climbs the narrow steps to the plateau above, it's difficult not to wonder just how well this small island will fare in the long term with the effects that such numbers will inevitably have. Something which hasn't yet been lost, however, is the island's beauty. Designated a National Nature Reserve in 2001, Staffa is also one of the few places in the UK where large numbers of puffins nest every year. Nesting around the cliff edge in springtime, these birds will raise their young here until they are ready to fledge in early August. But it's not just puffins which attract visitors to the island, it's the caves too, and one in particular has inspired visitors for centuries.
Oh wow, goodness. Well, this is it. This is Fingal's Cave. To get to it, we've walked across these hexagonal stones, forming a natural causeway to the cave. The entrance is just behind me, and we're about to head inside. So we're inside Fingal's Cave now. Looks as if it goes quite a long way back. Let's keep going as far as we can. An impressive sight. The sound of the water lapping up against the back of the cave is tremendous. It's being leaked on as well from the roof. This truly is an amazing sight, an amazing natural feature on this island. It's quite incredible, the hexagonal stones, the sound of the water lapping up against the back of the cave creates a special atmosphere in here. It's quite incredible.
As we leave the magnificence of Staffa behind, I can't help but hope that this island can continue to weather both the elements and the impact of its visitors for future generations to enjoy. The next stage of our journey takes us to the small island of Eas Dale, accessible only by boat from the neighbouring Isle of Skye, crossing the famous Bridge over the Atlantic.
We've just come across from Skye on a little boat, which you can see behind me there. We arrived at Eas Dale. It's one of the Slate Islands, and quite appropriately on the beach by the pier, strewn with pieces of slate.
One of the Slate Islands, and covering an area less than 10 hectares, Eas Dale is the smallest permanently inhabited island in the Inner Hebrides, with a population today of around 70 people.
Eas Dale is famous for its slate, and at the height of the industry there were 7 working slate quarries on the island. The chippings given off from the slate quarrying have very smooth and long flat sides, and they're ideal for skimming. This gave rise to the World Stone Skimming Championships, which were set up in 1983 and continue to this day.
This event attracts over 300 contestants and media attention from around the world, helping to bolster an economy now considered to be the main industry here. Remnants of the time when Eas Dale was considered to be the centre of the Scottish slate industry, however, can still be seen all over the island. During this period, the population grew to around 500, with quarrying continuing until the industry collapsed in the 1950s. As a result, Eas Dale gradually emptied, with the population dwindling to just 4 in the 1960s. Today, however, the advent of local tourism and a high-speed internet connection enabling many residents to work from home, the island finds itself in a rare position with over half of its residents being aged between 20 and 60. It is therefore hoped that this can provide a firm base for the island's economic development in years to come. In order to reach the Isle of Skye, the final stop in the Inner Hebrides, we would first need to travel north on the mainland to Fort William.
And that is so we can board this steam train, the Jacobite Railway, an 84-mile trip passing through beautiful and dramatic scenery. It will take us to Mull, from where we can get to the island of Skye.
Named after the rising of the late 18th century, the route follows a section of the West Highland Line, a crucial economic link between the Scottish Highlands and central Scotland, and a route once voted the top rail journey in the world. Travelling aboard a train made famous as the Hogwarts Express in the Harry Potter films, the route we are travelling today is equally impressive. From Fort William, we travel through Britain's most westerly mainland railway station, Arisaig. Head north past Loch Morar, the deepest freshwater loch in Britain, and the River Morar, Britain's shortest river, before arriving at Mull, next to the deepest seawater loch in Europe, Loch Nevis.
The train is absolutely packed with people, and you can see why. On either side of us, you can see some amazing views of the landscape around us, giving rise to the Jacobite Railway being described as one of the greatest railway journeys in the world.
As we continue our journey, the train passes over the 30-metre high 19th century Glenfinnan Viaduct, with the waters of Loch Shiel in the distance. The train briefly stops at Glenfinnan station, providing those who choose to alight with an opportunity to explore the local surrounds, learn more about the place where the Jacobite Rising began, or simply browse the train's very own on-board souvenir shop.
So here we are in our very own first class compartment, the Jacobite Railway. We left Fort William about an hour ago and we've just crossed over Glenfinnan Viaduct. We stopped at Glenfinnan station where you can alight from the train and have a look round the museum that's there. We're continuing the journey onto Mull now, passing some beautiful scenery as we go.
The route continues through spectacular scenery, and it's almost like you've entered a different world. I almost expected dinosaurs to appear. In fact, the tunnels and smoke are really the only things reminding you that you're on a steam train. The Jacobite Railway is definitely a popular tourist attraction, with people from many different countries and of many different ages choosing to experience the heritage and beauty of the route.
So have you been on the railway before, the Jacobite Railway?
No, this is our first time.
Okay.
First time.
Now I gather from your accents, Canadian or
Canadian.
Canadian. Oh, I got it right. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So are you enjoying the views?
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, amazing. Just breathtaking. You can see so much more
Yeah.
than you can see just by driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and from a higher elevation too, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. And you kind of get the feel of an old passenger train, don't you, when you're sitting here?
Yeah, a little bit. I think that the most fun part was when the smoke was coming through the window. And the ash that you can see on the table, the coal that's come through. It's pretty amazing, yeah. It's well worth it.
And it's a return to one of the simpler times in life.
Yeah, definitely. So is this your first time on the railway then? The Jacobite Railway?
On this type of
Yes.
railway? Yes, it is.
Oh, brilliant. Are you having a good time?
Yes, definitely.
It's great, isn't it?
The view is a bit
I know.
blocking in a way because of the rain.
It's a shame about the weather, isn't it? But yeah, but at least you're having a good time.
Arriving into Mallaig, past the shore of Loch Nevis, the Jacobite is definitely an unforgettable journey. We now travel to the most northerly inhabited island in the Inner Hebrides.
Well, the weather has taken a bit of a turn for the worst. It's now starting to rain, it's fairly windy as well. But that's not going to put us off, because we're on our way to the island of Skye, which is just behind me. Once we get there, in about 15 minutes' time, we're going to explore the island and see what delights it has to offer.
The largest island in the Inner Hebrides, and one of the most popular tourist destinations in Scotland, the Isle of Skye has been occupied by people since the Mesolithic period. One of the worst islands to be affected by the Highland clearances, Skye saw a large decline in population by the mid-1850s, with nearly 40,000 people forced to emigrate. Today, the island has a thriving tourist industry. At the centre of the island lay the Cullins, a range of rocky mountains, the highest point of which is over 3,000 feet. These peaks dominate the skyline and attract many walkers and climbers. However, today we're on the way to see a different sight. Located on the northeast coast, the Glenelg Ferry links Cailíre on Skye to Glenelg on the mainland. Crossing the Cailíre Straits, it provides a rare glimpse into traditional methods.
So we're here waiting to cross the Cailíre Straits. We're going to go on the Glenelg Ferry, which is the last turntable ferry in Scotland.
The distance travelled by the ferry is a mere 550 metres, making it the shortest crossing point in the Straits, something which has made this route popular since the first cattle drovers swam their cattle across many centuries ago. Since then, this route has continued to be a vital link between Skye and the mainland, especially in the period before the construction of the railway and the Skye Bridge. Indeed, there has been a passenger ferry in operation here since the 17th century, and a vehicle ferry since 1934. Now owned by the local community with additional funding grants from external organisations, the Glenelg Ferry proves popular during the tourist season, and it would be tempting to call the ferry an attraction in itself. This is because it's not merely about getting from A to B on this boat. For many of those making the trip across, it's about the journey itself, from the unique boarding approach and the chance to witness decade-old methods as the turntable is swung around by hand, to seeing spectacular wildlife and scenery along the route. It's an experience which is in complete contrast to that encountered on the more commercial ferries which we've been on so far, and one which yet again symbolises the strong community spirit found on these islands. One thing to always bear in mind when driving on the islands is that there is no shortage of single-track roads. With passing places positioned some distance apart, it's almost guaranteed that you will never be near one when you meet someone else. And so, a degree of patience and the ability to drive whilst looking backwards a lot is definitely required. Whilst the Cailíre crossing point and others like it matched the needs of trade and travel for centuries, the growing need for more reliable, weather-resistant mainland links was difficult to ignore. One of the results of this, and the next stop on our route, is the Skye Bridge. Located on the northeastern shores of the island, the bridge replaced the ferry service over the same stretch and carries the A87 over the Kyle Akin, linking Skye with the island of Eilean Ban.
Behind me you can see Skye Bridge. It was opened in 1995 and cost in total £39 million to build.
£12 million of which was provided by a grant from the Scottish Government. It was in fact Scotland's first private finance initiative, but it unfortunately didn't generate the positive headlines which such a project perhaps could have. This was largely due to the high tolls imposed by the private commercial group who built it, who aimed to recoup their investment over a 27-year period. Indeed, by charging what were at the time the highest bridge tolls in Europe, a staggering £11.40 per car return, they actually met their target some 10 years ahead of schedule, earning approximately £27 million by mid-2003. Following years of protest by local communities and businesses, on the 21st of December 2004, the Scottish executive bought back the bridge from its private owners, with tolls instantly abolished. Before heading north to Uig, we make a slight detour southwest towards Algol, to see an area which we had been told by the owners of our B&B was not to be missed. And even on the route there, we could see they weren't wrong.
So we've just stopped by the side of the road to take in the sight of this lovely waterfall behind us. And it is in full flow because there has been quite a lot of rain over the past few days. So it's looking pretty spectacular.
The remainder of the route to Algol is equally, if not more stunning, passing through the magnificent Strathard Peninsula, a mountain range linked to the Cullens, and which stretches from Loch Slapin west to Loch Scavaig. In the shadow of these incredible mountains, the road follows the shoreline of Loch Slapin before eventually arriving at the small hamlet of Algol. From here, the rugged coastline is accessible by foot. On a calm day, with only the sound of the waves for company, it's easy to appreciate the appeal of this wonderful place. And here is where this part of our journey ends.
So we've just boarded the ferry at Uig, and as we leave the island of Skye behind us, we also say goodbye to the Inner Hebrides. However, we say hello to the Outer Hebrides, as our journey now takes us to the island of Lewis.
Our journey through this part of the Hebrides has been spectacular and eye-opening. We've witnessed communities adapting to preserved traditions amongst modern-day pressures on the islands. We've seen how these islands have helped to shape the history well beyond their physical boundaries. And we've experienced the abundance of spectacular scenery, stunning landscapes and diverse wildlife the islands have to offer. In the next episode, we cross to the Outer Hebrides and experience cultures and traditions like no others. We discover an ecosystem under threat before reaching the end point of our journey.